Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello everybody at home and welcome to this auspicious occasion where we have reached 100 episodes of Houselights. That's right, 100 episodes that you, I'm sure, have journeyed with us for every single episode and watched every single movie that we have. And so we decided to do something a little special this week. And if you've downloaded this episode, which I'm sure you have because you're listening to us, you know that we are going into the Wayback Machine. And to celebrate 100 years, we're going back about 100 years, going from the 2020s to the 1920s, specifically 1927, with Fritz Lang's Metropolis. And with me, as always, is the brilliantly spherical and shiny and very polished up on top robot, John Mills. John, how are you doing?
Well, I was going to say, if everybody's been here since the very beginning for every episode, they actually have beaten one of the hosts. So, you know, that's a plus. Come on. It's all said in love. You know that. But yes, I'm really interested to get into this conversation specifically because this is one of those movies that is referenced 1,000 ways from Sunday every single time you watch any film documentary at all. Right. And as a result, it sort of like slipped through the cracks for me. I never got to it. So this was a wonderful excuse for me to finally plug that gap. There are so many things from 100 years ago I have seen, yet this one snuck by. So looking forward to this talk.
And also with us is the indispensable worker 11811, Darren Moser. Now, Darren, you call yourself a film major, that you went to film school. So how can you live with yourself saying that you've never watched this movie before?
I went to film school back before streaming was a thing. So finding these films was sometimes a little trickier. Not gonna lie, I was expecting Superman to show up. He did not. He did not show up it was very disappointed that he did not show up in Metropolis.
It's funny that you bring that up because the entire reason why Metropolis in Superman is named Metropolis is because Schuster and Siegel were huge fans of this movie.
Oh, it totally makes sense now. And
yeah,
I did know of the inspiration of C-3PO from the Machine Man that we see.
Especially if you look at the original artwork of C-3PO. It's a dead ringer for the Machine Man.
Yeah, and some of that stays through, like the curve on the top of his head. You still have elements that breathe through.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, you can see that Rotwanger's mechanical hand was reproduced in Doctor Strangelove.
I thought it was Rotwang. Because
Rotwang or Wanger?
I think it's Rotwang.
It is Rotwang.
He would have had a very difficult time in my grade school.
Or it could be Rotwang. I'm not quite sure.
It probably is.
You're going to hear us butcher a lot of names in this. Even though I took German for like 4 years, I'm still going to screw it.
It's going to be a lot of the protagonist, the girl, the dad. That's how I'm going to say it.
It probably in German would have been like Rotwang or something like that.
Yeah, Rotwang. Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah. All right. Well, yes. So you guys have not seen this film before, and I have several times because I'm a good person. And so I want to know, John, what did you know about this movie going into it? Like, did you know the plot? Did you know the emphasis? What was in your head? What were you expecting to?
I knew the generic plot, like the rough outline of it, having to do with there being the metropolis and the worker class and the upper class and the stratification between them. I knew about the robot inspiration for C-3PO. I believe in one of the many making of Star Wars things, probably dating all the way back to the one that came out narrated by William Conrad back in the 1970s. They had reference to Metropolis because they would have included it in the clip with Flash Gordon as the inspiration point and everything like that, showing, brief moments and all of that sort of stuff. So I had the rough outline of it. I didn't know it was 2.5 hours. Like you and I went back and forth. I know that there's like different cuts and stuff like that. But this is the thing. I tried going into it with that knowledge of approaching it very much from the mindset of film was replacing live theater, and a live theater performance would have been like 2.5, 3 hours. And I'm like, everybody's going out for the evening to go see this. So the pacing, especially with early film,
and a live orchestra,
and an intermission.
I very much put myself in the mindset of this is like a night at the theater, and it's paced like that. I've seen enough, silent films and everything. I know how it goes, where like they're just coming out of theater. It's still finding its way and everything, and so very much came into this with the idea of, okay, I'm going to appreciate this for its time and sort of the rules it was playing by. Then that's how I went into it.
It's crazy because at 2.5 hours, it was almost impossible to regain the money that they spent on it because you could not put enough showings during the day with it being 2.5 hours. And the company who produced, I think UFA, the company who produced it, sank so much money into it that they fired the head of the studio and brought in new management. And the new management was so conservative that they cut out all of the pro-communist stuff, the overtly communist stuff from the movie, and cut it down, and thus tried to get it under 2 hours and re-released it. And that's like that's just the beginning of why we have so many different versions of this film and why so much of it was lost. And so it's just funny that you're like 2.5 hours. It's an event. Like the studio was like so utterly pissed that it was 2.5 hours, and they sank so much money into it. It was like Apocalypse Now, and and there was just, and I think like it was, they found footage in Argentina, like it was a 16 millimeter print. It was a copy. It was a 16 millimeter copy because 35 millimeter was really hard to store because it would totally explode and catch fire. And so they would often do a 16 millimeter print, a copy, but it was way inferior quality because it was a copy of an inferior 35 millimeter print that ran for years and years and years. And so that's why actually in the version that we saw the most complete, the version that came out into, I guess we should specify that the version that we're talking about and that we watched is the version that came out in 2010 and is the most complete version known to date. And the majority of it was in good quality condition, but then it had probably about 25 minutes total, maybe 20 minutes total of that Argentinian footage that was clearly crappy and like cropped weird. And then there's about 2 scenes that just were described via text.
Oh, yeah. That was weird. I'm like, I'm guessing there's no footage not found.
It's very much footage not found. So they had to go back to the original script to say like, oh yeah, and then this happened.
I mean, it really wasn't that bad.
No, it wasn't that bad.
Know. Well, but Darren, I know this is your first time seeing it too, but just on that note, I just want to jump in and say, like, one of the thoughts that I had while I was sitting there was, I'm surprised, or I will be surprised if eventually somebody doesn't use machine learning technology to take those cropped off scenes and like extend them upward. Because there are shots where they are full shots and you see the crowd and everything. And all I'm thinking is, well, you could extend that building nowadays with that. You could do sort of the way Peter Jackson approached that footage from World War I and restored it and turned it into 3D layers and colorized it in a competent way and all of that sort of stuff. I'm surprised in a sense that 2010 is not long enough for this to have been in existence for somebody to get that wild hair and say, you know what, I'm going to sink $10 million into that. But I think that's an eventuality. Do you think people will get upset if they do that?
Well, I think it would be received better than the Marauder version that came out in the 80s, which was completely recut. It was under 2 hours, and it utilized new 80s music, original 80s music from like Bonnie Tyler, Freddie Mercury, and it was colored in a certain way, kind of like in a sepia tone, and it didn't use intertitles. It used subtitles to kind of keep the pacing going. And I think the only cool thing about I've seen it, and the only good thing about the cut is that it uses subtitles, because it really does keep the pacing going. Like, it really, really does. But I think it won some award for best original music in some contest. I can't remember.
Terrible.
It was. Like, it really was. My uncle, I watched Metropolis long ago, like whatever version was available at the time, and then my uncle, or actually Sarah's uncle, said like, "Oh, I love it. Let's watch it together." He pulled out his copy, and it was Marauder, and I'm like, "What the hell are you showing me?" I had no idea it existed.
I was hoping you were going to say
awesome.
that. I was hoping that you were going to say that the best part of it was that they used "Total Eclipse of the Heart" by Bonnie Tyler, because that I'm on board for. Okay, great.
Now, Darren, being a bad film student, what did you know about this film going into it? Like, were you fed lies?
You know what?
Like,
you could be the worker. I'm gonna go trade places and go live the high life. You turn those dials. No, yeah. I mean, I obviously knew the C-3PO inspiration. I even knew about Maria because I was big into robots as a little kid. Always checked out the same books from the library, and they talked about, RUR, like the first use of the word robot, and also of Maria. So I knew Maria, and I at first was thinking like, wait, is she gonna die? Like, are they literally going to put her into the robot? And then it looked like she died, and then all of a sudden she wasn't dead. So I'm like, okay, I guess it's not, total. But yeah, I didn't know a lot about it. Again, I knew pretty much what John had said. I knew the, uprising, the worker class, the above and the below. But as far as the actual plot, I had no idea. And yeah, it was a wild, we were talking about subtitles. I actually like the intertitles better because it goes with the pacing. And for me, it was really interesting. It was almost fascinating to watch what they did and didn't intertitle. Like, there were some times when they're talking, and like, they're talking a while, and I'm like, man, this intertitle that's coming up in a couple seconds is going to be like a paragraph. And then it would, cut away and to the intertitle, and it would just say like a simple line. But you know what? I never felt, because it's a different art form. Like, we don't know how to intertitle now, like, or we don't have the pacing that they did because that was the technology of the time. And so it was really interesting just to look at what they didn't intertitle, because honestly, I never felt like, oh, I really wish I knew what they said, because they expressed, and they, you were talking about the move from theater, and I think that's totally right, because this felt like a ballet. It felt like, the way they're acting and emoting, like, the way Maria is dancing, and the way, the son is, just expressing. You almost didn't need any intertitles. Like, honestly, I could probably handle, like, I wouldn't know a lot of what's going on, but I could handle watching this without intertitles. They convey so much emotion and expression. You can tell he doesn't like this guy. You can tell that's his father, and he's disappointed. Like, that comes across in just the visual expression. And obviously the intertitle is important, and it tells the story. But, I mean, I say like they don't make them like that anymore because we have sound. Like, you don't need to make it like that. I think of like Singing in the Rain, where they have an intertitle, movie with the Count, but, or the Dueling Cavalier. But it's different though. It's like every single word and every single phrase. And it's like this, because it's not actually a movie that was made in the 20s. There's something genuine about the specific intertitles we got. But what do I know? I'm a bad film student. So
cut to one of thousands of clips of George Lucas saying, well, film is a visual medium. But, speaking of Maria dancing, The only crack I could think of was, now I know where they got the inspiration for the Uhura dance in Star Trek V.
Oh,
That's all I got. I'm sorry. But it's what's really interesting about that whole fake Maria thing going on.
Hell, yeah.
Is just this wildly over the top melodramatic acting style to capture it on camera.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the actress obviously was the right choice because she does such a good job of inhabiting the two different roles. And
you believe they're two different people.
Yeah, it's amazing because there's not enough, I think, attention given to the actress when people talk about this film. It all hinges on her ability to pull this particular sleight of hand off, and it works. It's actually highly effective. And to what you're talking about, Darren, if you took the interstitials away and everything like that, you'd still be able to tell, okay, this is different Maria versus original, this is new Maria versus classic Maria. And,
well, I want to ask you, John, because this was your first time, maybe I missed an intertitle or something, but I totally thought Maria was being burned at the stake. Like, is that a switch that is supposed to, is part of the story?
No,
okay.
That was a switch.
Because I
it's like
totally bought
if you miss it.
Yeah. I totally bought it, and I'm like, oh my gosh! Like and then she changed into the Machine Man, and I'm like, oh, when did that happen? When did the Machine Man walk out?
The first time I saw this movie, I went to go pee during that switch.
The worst possible time.
It was the worst possible time, and I come back and I'm like, oh my god, they're gonna kill Maria.
Well, I think that
they do, but yeah.
What I think that's very interesting as well is that with the son and the worker switching places earlier, and then Maria and fake Maria, there's that duality, but also it brought me very much to mind of Tale of Two Cities with by Dickens. That's at play here too, and it's one of those things where the two things that are very interesting about looking at this from sort of a retrospective perspective is the fact that this angst that we still have now about humanity versus technology, it's all been happening since the Industrial Revolution. I mean, at least half of Marx and Engels' whole bit was that they were very angsty about leaving the agricultural lifestyle. The world was changing in a really scary way. And I think that this taps very much into that idea that there is this angst, this fear that makes total sense about where is technology taking us? What are we going to accomplish? And how are people going to live in this world? So it's always weird coming at a movie like this because it's not even something where you can say like or dislike. You can strictly only look at it in terms of work and historical perspective, because there's no way, like if I tried to get my kids to watch this, there's a 0.0% chance they're sitting through 10 minutes of it. Yeah. They're just, my oldest might humor me.
My son would be like, Dad, I can't read. Like,
yeah, well, my oldest would humor me. She'd sit there and say, okay, Dad, so long as you like it, because she's a very gentle soul. My middle child she would just walk out of the room. She'd just be done. And
my 5-year-old,
zero chance.
Yeah, my 5-year-old, when she was 4, we tried to show her Wizard of Oz, and she's like, "The TV's broken."
You didn't get to the color part.
Yeah, I had to fast forward to the color part. Like we had to skip over the rainbow and everything because she was just losing her mind.
Well, it's interesting. I want to talk about the visuals for a moment, because I feel like it almost works better because it is this 1927. Like, I know there's models, and I know there's miniatures, and I know there's like special effects shots and long shots and trick angles, but because everything is that flat monochrome look, it it blends and hides so well where I'm like, I don't know, maybe they built a giant city on a soundstage. Maybe. I don't know. Because
with the
nowadays,
money that Lang consumed, he probably could have.
Yeah. And so it works. It's one of those things where it's a moment in cinema history that those effects work in that way. Like if you tried to make it now, or it made me think a little bit of like Forbidden Planet. Like Forbidden Planet also has, matte shots and miniatures and giving the same, I would say very symbolically, like very similar, but in color and 50 years later. But there's something great though about the shots of Metropolis where I just buy them. I buy every single thing that's put on the screen in front of me, and it's gorgeous. Like the architecture and everything.
The Metropolis shots were primarily used with miniatures and stop motion, and it was one of the first movies to do miniatures in this style and in this scale, and it was actually one of the first movies to do this kind of matte effect, which is called the Schuften process, which is absolutely insane. And I'm going to read this to you. So no optical printing system existed at the time. So to create a matte effect, a large mirror was placed at an angle to reflect a piece of artwork while live footage was projected onto the reverse. To expose the projected footage, the silvering on the back of the mirror had to be scraped off in strategically appropriate places. One mistake would ruin the whole mirror. This was done for each separate shot that had to be composited in this manner. That is insane. That is absolutely insane.
But see, this is one of the things where I find it fascinating. Is that process that you're talking about is insane, and it's very obviously somebody sat down and said, this is how I can do it, so let's do it. And then, of course, as technology moves forward, people say, that sucked. I don't ever want to do that again. How can we do this better? And that's the progress of everything in film, right? In every technological aspect.
That's why digital editing came about, because Lucas was like, this is
or
taking
even
too much
just
time.
matte painting on glass. So which is basically the next step of not having the mirror and shooting through a plate.
Yes. Yeah. But there is also an aspect of these craftsmen, these craftspeople, whatever, like sitting there and doing this, it teaches you a patience and attention to detail that I think when you get to the modern age and people sit there and they can't quite put words on it, but they look at CG effects in a movie and they say, that doesn't really work. It's because it's so important for that group of people who worked 10 years prior to hand that meticulous nature and attention to detail to the next group that's coming up. Mentor them, basically. And I think that's the trick right now is things can be done at a scale that's very large without that same sort of terror of one mistake mattering as much. I know that I'm going on for a while, but what I'm trying to say is that's why you see this wild variation in computer effects, where you look at something now sometimes even from a Disney and you say, I know you have the tools and the money to do this. Why isn't this better? And it's largely because they say good enough is good enough. Let's just get out there. Whereas Lang and his team have to sit there and say, if we screw up one thing, this won't work at all. And we can't just...
And you're pulled out of that world.
Let that happen. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Whereas nowadays, I would argue that the flood of content is such that they just don't have the time to care that much about it.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because Spielberg, actually, I think it was Spielberg who said, with the invention of nonlinear editing, digital editing, is that you can make a cut instantly. You can try it out 1,500 different ways and just figure out what you like best. And you can do it.
It's a blessing, but it's also a curse.
And it's a curse in his mind, slightly, because back in the old days of optical printing and cutting physical film, if you wanted to make a cut, it took minutes, several minutes to do one cut. And so if you wanted to make that cut, you had to really, really think about it. You were like, okay, well, should we cut here? Should we cut here, cut there? And you had to really focus, like the director and the editor had to really agree and really focus. They're like, okay, if we don't like it, we're going to lose like a half an hour. And so you had to really just process it in your head first. And you can tell with a lot of editing today. And I mean, this of course was the case since the invention of film, but you know what we're saying is that you can see a lot of sloppy editing where it's just like, just make sure that you can see their face, wide, tight, you know?
Or like now it's like, oh, I want to bump in a frame. Oh, no problem. Takes half a second to hit a keystroke. And
But there's also, I think, paired with that, in the positive sense, is the fact that the reason we have an incomplete print with a 16 millimeter garbage pieces here and there happening is because when people made film in the past, they didn't sit there and say, I'm making something that must be and will be preserved for 100 years after I've made it. They were just trying to churn it out. Now, I'm not saying Metropolis is this. Lang was obviously trying to make an artistic statement, and an artistic effort was put into it. But he wasn't, I would argue that the filmmakers back then weren't thinking in terms of, and how am I going to save this? How am I going to make it go? They're just trying to get the thing out, sort of the same way that Shakespeare is just writing plays. And it's just a happenstance of history that his happened to be the ones that were saved from the time period. And also, cultural changes and everything like that. But
now, Lang, he liked the process of making this film more than he liked the finished product. And the people in the film loathed the process of making it, but really enjoyed the final product. And I just find that really interesting because it took something ridiculous like 17 months to film.
Oh, God.
Or 14, something like that.
It was over a year
just to film it.
Well, think of it like every shot is like everything is built. Everything is, I mean, obviously that's done in other films, but some reason in my mind in 1927 it feels like a more monumental feat. It's like, oh, here's another shot of the catacombs going up this little staircase, which means you had to build that, which means it had to physically be there, or it had to be a mat of some kind. And there's like so many shots there. I didn't feel very much repetition or like, oh yeah, well, we built the one catacomb set and we just shot it from different. No, they built like every single shot is a whole new thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was. Do you guys know anything about the filming process of this? Like,
not a thing. Look, I'll state it for anybody who hasn't been here for 100 episodes by this point. I'm the laziest podcaster on the planet. I don't do any prep, so please tell me all about it.
Well, I just meant like wondering if you heard anything like that, because like Lang was notorious for being difficult to work with and demanded so much from his people that he would like on, you remember the shot of Frater falling to Maria's feet?
Yes.
Like in the catacombs. He spent 2 days on that one shot. 2 full days on that one shot. And Frater was just like the actor who played Frater was just, he couldn't stand up after he was done.
I'm surprised then that nobody beat the living snot out of Fritz Lang. Like, because the thing is,
happened a couple of times.
Oh, really? Okay.
There was tons of conditions, filming conditions that put the extras at risk. Like there was an insane amount of extras, like 15,000 extras.
There were so many extras. So, like, there's some shots where there's like, I mean, there's some where they're optically adding them, but there's other shots where you're like, there's a lot of people on screen.
37,000 extras.
My God.
25,000 men, 11,000 women, 1,100 bald men, 750 children, 100 dark-skinned people, and 25 Asians. 310 shooting days.
Wow, that's a lot. But
it's
it
like
also
Apocalypse
makes me,
Now territory of hell.
But the thing is, it also makes me think that somebody could walk around and be like, "Hey, I was in Metropolis," and everybody could be like, "Yeah, good. So was I. Whatever."
So was half the country, Bob.
Yeah, right.
So was half the country.
Germany's because Germany's economy was in the toilet. There were so many unemployed people that's why they could get so many extras in Germany. And the conditions were so bad that like one producer really thought that they were going to revolt. Like all these extras were just going to walk off set. Like, they had to send somebody from the studio. It's literally
what the movie's about. So they're like, you know, that's a good idea. Like us, the working class extras revolting against our overlords.
But yeah, like there was, I think during the shot where they're going into the mouth of the heart of the machine, and it's like they're being swallowed by a god. They shot that for, thank you. They shot that for days and days and days, to the point where someone from the studio came in and said, "Shut it down. You have enough footage." And like all the men had sunburns on their head because they were bald, and he wanted them all bald, and they were just in the searing sun, and it was just like horrible condition. And like the stuff that he put his lead actress through, Brigitte Helm, is legendary. Like she, like when she swung down from the bell, she actually made. Oh yeah,
I was looking at that. I'm like, that looks kind of sketchy.
She did it for real, and they're like, no, it's fine. We put some mattresses down. She was 25 feet in the air, and a mattress is not going to save you for 25 feet in the air. No. And she makes it in one grab, but then slides down. But as she's sliding down, it bounces her up against the bell. And she's bruised and almost broken, and she's just crying and running out. She also was in Lang insisted that Brigitte be in the robot suit, even though it totally could have been a stunt woman or somebody else. He insisted that she be in it, and they left her in it so long that she passed out. And her dress also caught fire during the burning scene. So, and it's just like all this stuff. So, and like, you remember that shot where a dude grabbed her hair?
Yeah.
Like yanked her by the hair? That was real and not talked about beforehand.
Okay. That's all messed up. I'm going to try to put a positive spin on it and say, obviously, actors unions later looked at the film and they said, okay, here are the rules from here on out. You hear me, Mr. Lang? Like,
yes.
But in terms of all of this stuff, like it is mind-numbing, but at the same time, what's very interesting, you talk about she was in the suit so long that she passed out. You flash forward to Anthony Daniels, who's in the suit for C-3PO, talking all the time about how on the set of Star Wars, people thought he was a prop, and he would just be standing there and people would lean on him and smoke. People would, talk freely about stuff. He would, he wrote down in his article that he had for the Fan magazine back in the 90s that people would have conversations in front of him thinking he was a robot, like just some sort of prop that was there. And he was like, I'll never repeat them because they didn't know I could hear them, but I felt terrible because I heard all of these things. And he's like, I didn't want to know. So isn't that so weird though? It's so weird. I mean, that even speaks to sort of the point of the movie where once you remove that recognizable humanity from something, people just disconnect. They don't think of you as a person anymore. And
and even to Darren's point, like where he said like the situations of the extras and the actors and the producers coming in saying that you're going to have a revolt on your hands unless you treat these people better is the definition of irony. It's just insane, like how the parallels are going on and how like Lang's so much of a hypocrite. But Lang got the inspiration for Metropolis from visiting New York in 1923 or 24, where he sees the skyline and he's just like, holy crap, I got an idea for a movie. And he went and he told his wife about it, and his wife wrote a book. He wrote the book on the novelization of Metropolis. I can't even call it the novelization because the novel came first specifically to help boost
the prescript.
Yeah, it was a prescript, kind of like with Godfather.
Well, in 2001.
In 2001.
Well, and then in like the middle of the movie, we had like another movie, which was the whole like story of the Tower of Babel, which I didn't see coming. And it's like, oh my gosh,
I love that bit.
Here's a whole nother bit. And that was beautiful.
It's very cool. But at the same time, when I see the word intermezzo, in my brain, I'm like, intermission.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, cool. I'm going to go, oh, wait, there's footage. Okay,
it's
cool.
The
What's
first
happening
after
here?
credit scene that you thought you could leave for, but you really should stay because it's part of the story.
Exactly.
No, I did wonder that. I'm like, so obviously they had an intermission. Did it happen like right before that? I'm assuming so, or right after. But yeah, it's like this whole other dream sequence. But again, at its core though, it's a really solid story. Like you can totally tell what is happening, who is connected to who, the plight of the workers. I think my favorite character though has to be Grot, who is the guardian of the heart machine, the guy with the beard.
Yes. Yep.
I'm like, he's the man. Like he's the one who's like, hey everybody, let's listen to me and we're all gonna go do this. And everyone's like, sure, Grot, we'll listen to you. And but I also got vibes from Charlie Chaplin, which I know was later, but like when they're working the machine and the way they move and shift,
you can
back
see
and
modern
forth,
times. Yeah,
you can totally see modern times. And when he's spinning the dials on I don't know what that machine does, but it seems like a pain in the butt to work. And I'm throwing a whole lot out here, but the clock that only went to 10 was just for the workers, right? Like in 1927, we didn't have like a 12 base time system that I somehow missed.
Shift.
Okay. That's what I thought. Cause I'm like, why are all the clocks going to 10? Like I'm trying to think about, I'm like, did we change to a base 12 after 1927? I'm pretty sure not.
All I could think of was The Simpsons, where the Mensa people take over Springfield, and Principal Skinner has the line at one point where he says, everything runs better on metric time. And, so what I find super interesting about all the worker stuff that you're talking about is, again, there's that angst of the Industrial Revolution and everything. There's the Great Gatsby aspect of all of, the upper class people partying without any thought to where anything's coming from. But there's also, I think, just this residual after effect of the futurist movement that lost all of its popularity when World War I broke out. But its whole idea was embracing this future that would strip people of their humanity and embrace the idea that we would become less individual and less human. And it embraced artificiality. It also embraced the idea that war was a positive to keep the population under control and more people needed to die and all of that sort of stuff. Hence why they frequently got attacked on the streets of Italy when they would have their little demonstrations, as it were. But there are still aspects of this with, I'll just go ahead and call him Grand Moff Tarkin, who's running the whole city. And he, please, I'm not the only one who saw it.
Fredersen.
Fredersen. Yeah. Fredersen.
Johann Fredersen.
But that's right. That's what Yo would be. The whole time I'm like, I've never seen that name before, but you're right. Johann. I just right now. There you go. That makes sense.
Johann.
Well, they didn't have a period after the H, so I didn't think of it as an abbreviation. So, but just that whole idea of the workers are anybody who I don't see is just a tool in my machine, sort of thing, and this embrace of if I don't see it, I don't have to worry about it. And just that sort of blasé attitude about everything. And the only thing that wakes him up is he realizes his son is involved in the mess down below.
Until he gets that personal connection, which is so true. It's such a human trait that, we see so many people who have, ignorant ideas or bigoted ideas until they have a personal connection with something.
This was the first episode of Undercover Boss when he just goes down. It's literally the same concept.
And then Georgie loses his mind at the nightclub.
Yes, he does.
But all the characters, like the inventor, like Watrang, craziest looking dude I've ever seen. I'm like, oh, that's the crazy inventor. Don't you dare tell me he's not crazy, because look at him. Just look at him. He's got like Nosferatu vibes. He looks
so true.
So scary.
I really wish that they did more backstory with the inventor and Johann.
Yeah.
because like it left a lot to the imagination about who Hell was, and like you just had to assume it was some sort of love triangle, and that's what it was between Hell and
Right.
the inventor.
So she was the wife
and
of
Fredersen
of
the dad, the
yeah. So the
guy who
mother
runs
then
it.
of Frater, obviously.
Yeah, but the inventor loved her. So why on earth? What I could never understand is why did Fredersen go to him if he knows this man despises him?
Well, but he needs people like that. That's what he says. He's like, when my people fail me, I come to you. Like he's his last resort.
I guess you're right. You're right.
But I totally get it. It's, it's not the wisest move. And it ends up, I mean, literally, he's the one who causes everything to go bad. The son doesn't. Not really. He's starting to. But, well, and then, you have 11811, the worker swap, which was really interesting. Or even Josaphat, the who was the assistant. And when he gets dismissed, that scene is like, you're like, oh, dang. Because, I mean, when he says, sir, like, do you know what it is to be dismissed from you? I'm like, yeah, I know. Like, you're done. Like, your life is over and forfeit at this point.
And Frater really liked Joseph. Like he liked talking to him real close.
Yeah,
they embraced.
They were real close.
A lot.
Those fellas.
Those fellas really liked each other.
I wonder how much of an artifact that might be from just the fact that they were still figuring out staging.
That could be
with the film.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just because they're
you could
so...
imagine seeing that on a theater stage from 80 feet away. Like that would look like it's the overacting and the emoting when you're like 2 inches from each other.
Well, it's almost the opposite of that, because in theater you want distance. Distance creates lines, and because it's either kiss or kill. Like if you're going to get that close, you're either going to kiss him or you're going to kill him in theater. So no.
Yeah, well, I mean, but the thing is just playing with the format. Like there are so many vestiges of, again, film being so young at this point.
Yes,
and not they're still trying to figure out how they're going to use it. And so it's the silent era gets absolutely forgotten in modern discourse because of the fact that it is just so difficult to plug into the idea of something where no sound at all is there without the orchestra. And it's, in a sense, I would argue that in terms of the editing decisions, it's got to be even more maddening because you have no sound continuity to give you an idea of what's there. You don't have any raw sound or even any ADR. It's just literally those pictures. And you have to make the best decision you can. What is going to get this meaning of the scene across?
With this particular film, they tried to plan it out as much as possible, and the composer was actually on set and played the piano during certain scenes. It doesn't mean that it was a 1-to-1 with like, oh, this note goes here when you say this. Right. It was to give the actors, it was to set the mood with the actors to kind of help them emote at a specific level. And that's why they played it on. Like, I thought that was very,
on
very
their third day of the shot to get it done. They really needed some extra motivation.
It's like, it's like if David Fincher went psychotic. That's what Fritz Lang.
Or again,
I could definitely see Fincher in this. Not Fincher. I'm sorry, not Fincher. A different David. I could see Lynch in this because I think that the points where this comes alive are when that sort of German expressionist tendency comes in. And it's really interesting because at first I was really just sitting there and I was legitimately thinking to myself, oh, great. Oh, I've been through this road before. Okay, just try to purely come at it from an intellectual side. You're not going to get into this. But the minute that some of that more expressionist sort of stuff started happening,
like
I felt
when
like
death is like coming at you, the 7 deadly sins.
Right.
Yeah.
And Lang suddenly comes alive. I think that's very obviously where he finds his groove. I suppose you could argue that, setting aside all of the other issues, that the film took so long to film because he was unsure. He didn't know what was going to happen, because that stuff especially had to be created in the editing room in a large sense. Putting the things together and having that flow. And that's really where the energy happens in the movie. One question I wanted to ask, though, because I don't know the history of it, but I do know that there was one point where they showed some old Chaplin stuff and they changed the playback speed because they said it was more reflective of what people actually would have seen back then, because the film and playback for older stuff sometimes doesn't match the way we play it back through the machines or whatever. And I noticed in the final act, for lack of a better term, when the crowd is chasing them and there's a lot of running around and everything, was that the speed at which it would have been played back then? Or is that simply a technological leap sort of thing? Because it seemed to me that a lot of the stuff was very naturally movement, just a natural pace to everything. And then once we got to the running and the chasing, everything got sped up to that more, what I've been led to believe, slightly inaccurate Charlie Chaplin chase moment of people moving a little too quickly.
Well, there's no way that I can answer that definitively, because sometimes it's a case-by-case basis, because we're dealing with a hand crank where so many times, like during this era, that like you have a good camera operator, they know exactly how fast to go in order to move the film through the light, through the bulb, and then get you the right speed. And that's why so many times with some of the cheaper films or some like films that we were just like, let's just get through it, you have somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, and then they have inaccurate speed, so it's a different, jittery motion from scene to scene. Or you have people who are like, okay, like we need this sped up a little bit, so go slower. Like you rotate slower and then it's going to speed up later on. So that's why, like during action scenes, like with the Chaplin thing, like during action scenes or chase scenes, you go a little bit slower and it speeds up in post. So that's my guess as to why you saw much more natural movement throughout the picture. But then when they were chasing through the streets, it got a little bit quicker.
Well, because otherwise, the street is huge. By the time they get to the front, it's going to take like a couple minutes. They're like, oh, we'll just crank a tiny bit slower. And then it plays faster in the edit. There was Charlie Chaplin vibes. I got a lot of THX vibes.
Sure.
Lucas was clearly influenced by Metropolis and a lot of stuff.
Oh, yeah. And so it's interesting, like, we talked at the very beginning about this being like a referential film, and it's up there in, especially in special effects, but I almost feel like it's not necessarily directly referenced a lot. It's just kind of, it's part of the genesis of film. And so its impact has kind of just woven into film in general. So yeah, like it's hard to describe.
It's like Rashomon. Like you're not going to have people directly say like, oh, this is like that time that I watched Rashomon, but you're going to see the influence of that story structure.
Yes.
So it's so interesting. I think I absolutely agree, but it's so interesting because you can't help but wonder if this film doesn't get embraced by films. Let's take the Citizen Kane example. Citizen Kane does not land when it first gets released. It later gets embraced by film students and then finds a revival much later. You can't help but wonder, what would film look like if these key moments like Metropolis aren't later embraced by audiences or by students of film? Does the evolution of film language and narrative change? Does it, butterfly effect sort of argument?
Well, and I mean, if I was teaching film, I would use Metropolis for acting and story. like, look at this film without sound. And granted, it has intertitles, but even so, you know exactly what's going on, or the motivation is clearly coming through by the principal actors in every shot. And it's like, it's that first brick in the building of a film. Like, I'm not saying all movies need to have this, but if I was deconstructing how a film is made, this is like the opposite of like shaky cam cinema. Like, it is the very beginning of the building blocks.
Fun fact. I'm so glad that you brought that up. The reason why it is the exact opposite of shaky cam is because they actually flew to the US and got some Mitchell cameras, which could be penned down so that you had a completely steady image when it was shot, because so many cameras back then were like, the film would just be all over the place. It would just like, it wouldn't go through the gate in a uniform fashion.
Well, especially with all the mats, you would have to have that.
That's exactly why they said, like, it is worth it. They went over to US, got 2 Mitchell cameras, came back,
took a Polaroid of the skyscrapers in New York, said, "Oh, it's amazing," and then flew back.
and so like, and because of the matte paintings and the special effects and everything like that. And one other thing that just blew my mind when I found this out, was all the like, John, when you were talking about the expressionistic stuff, like when they did all that superimposed material,
the double exposure,
the double exposure, that wasn't done optically because they didn't have the optical process back then. So they shot it twice. They rewound the film and shot it over it again. And that's how they got their double exposure.
Yeah.
And that was possible with the Mitchell camera. It's just so crazy what was done to make this
like
movie
the
happen.
Shot where like 5 different streams of workers are converging into one, and the middle one is slightly different because it's a different shot. Like, but it works. Like, I get the sense that there's a ton of people, walking.
And then they
through.
go the expressionistic route by giving the license. Like, it makes your brain make it okay that the proportions are weird because they run it, like they just run with it. And then you see like a close up of an eye and a close up of a face, but then like far away shots of multiple people. So they use that optical process to get you different areas. So it's okay that it's a little off.
Well, and we were talking about like, how is this received back then? Because again, film is really, really young at this point. So if I was watching this, I would be like, wow, where is this magical city that you took your camera to and shot? Like, literally, if you've never seen special effects like this before, there's got to be a part of the populace that is like, well, where is this city? Because you obviously traveled there and shot it, because I cannot comprehend, that this was not real. I'm not saying everybody had that feel, but
I mean, I wouldn't. I think you might have a little bit of hyperbole there, because we're decades away from the train coming at the screen.
Okay, that's true.
People running away, because like the first short film was made in 1888.
Okay, that is true.
Yeah, so like we're a ways away. Like,
they still have no idea how it was filmed, but they aren't believing that it is totally real.
Right, like a film is much more of a mystery than it is today. But we're talking about, like, we're on the verge of sound here. Like, that's how old film is that in 1927 we had the first talkie with Al Jolson's The Jazz Singer. I know that some people argue that it's not really first, but whatever. It's recognized as the first in 1927, the same year that this came out. So achievements was being made. So like, the audience is much more savvy than they used to be. But I'd say that we're getting into the toddler phase of film.
I would say that the transformation scene probably would have amazed people. That would have been a trick that they would have found really, really interesting. I think that one of the things that I latched onto is obviously there's all of the the Christian allegory in there as well, but just the use of a presumably satanic symbol above the robot, just to make such a clear thing of like,
and on the
this
door
is bad
of the inventor.
right.
It's like Vader walking in for the first time. Boo!
Right. This is a bad thing.
Yeah.
And I think that I think that there are just so many different layers to what they're doing that this is I would say, just to get back to that whole thing of like, how does film narrative go differently? I think it possibly skews a little different, but I think that this is more an example, and I could be wrong, I don't know, but I think this is more an example of showing a filmmaker, especially a budding filmmaker who wants to make it art, that going for broke, this is that one thing that somebody in that time period could look at and say, just go full tilt, just throw everything in there, just go nuts and keep pushing, and you could come up with art. As opposed to, I mean, there are so many films that have been forgotten because they were garbage. Mm-hmm. They weren't worth remembering. And what a wonderful little signpost this becomes, because it shows people, especially aspiring filmmakers, what we are doing is an art form at this point. This isn't just cheap entertainment. This can mean something. This can say something. This can be something, no matter how painful it might have been behind the scenes for everybody who was making it.
And this is considered one of the first, if not the first, full feature-length film that's science fiction. And what's crazy is that H.G. Wells was alive and well and hated this movie.
Really?
And I think that is crazy to me. And like, how gut-wrenching would that be if you made the first full-length feature film science fiction and H.G. Wells writes a horrible review calling it silly? Like, he thought it was a technical achievement and that it was beautiful, but the message was muddied and ridiculous.
That's
do you know
mind-blowing.
Do you know who did love it, John?
Who?
Hitler. No. One of his favorite films. Loved it. And,
okay, I could see that.
Of course,
I could see that.
The message.
Well, no,
that's,
I mean,
that's one of the things, though, is that like it's like one of H.G. Wells's criticisms was that the message was so muddled that you could take whatever you want from it, and Hitler taking that message from this movie, a very communist movie, kind of gives credence to that.
Well, not to get into like the geopolitics of it sort of thing, Hitler also would have been very inclined toward the fact that a countryman made something that was well regarded. That would have meant something to somebody who was nationalistic, trying to restore this sort of idea of national pride and everything, and saying, look, we are the greatest filmmakers. Fritz Lang was one of our best, sort of thing. So I think that even beyond any sort of messaging or anything like that, that would have lined up or not lined up with anybody's interpretation, it would have been more important for him to say, that's proof that we are awesome because everybody loved it and we did it.
100%. That is a very, very solid comment. And on top of that, Hitler and is it Goebbels? Is it
Goebbels.
Pronounced Goebbels?
Goebbels.
I never pronounce that
Goebbels,
right.
Hitler. Yeah.
Yeah. I never pronounce that right. So Hitler and Goebbels they loved it so much that they sought Lang out and said, hey, we love it. You're amazing. You're great. And we want to make you a full-fledged Aryan. And Lang is like, well, I have Jewish heritage. And Goebbels said, oh, we decide who is Jewish. Mm-hmm. Don't worry. He fled to Paris that night.
Smart man.
He's
very
like,
smart man.
This is terrifying. Let's go. And because for the reasons that you just said, that Hitler would have shown him off to the world and probably made him produce some propaganda for him.
Sure. Oh, he'd be like, you're the minister of propaganda, whether or not you like it or not.
No, he wouldn't have been the minister, but like he definitely would have had like a Leni Riefenstahl sort of place in everything. And but that's the sort of thing that I think that is touchy when you talk about not Metropolis, but anything in film history, is when those tumblers line up and it gets into that sort of controversial territory about who liked what, who supported what, who did this, who said that. I think it's so important to look at it from a film history perspective and say, look, there are some very important landmarks in film history that might have been made by people who were either supported by or endorsed by or were themselves not the greatest people in the world.
Yeah.
But you have to acknowledge that it was a technical achievement or it was, a narrative achievement because it moved the art form forward. And that's the one thing I would never want to get lost with a film, whether it's Metropolis, whether it's Triumph for the Will, whether it's Birth of a Nation or anything like that. I think it's important to say, okay, in this context, this is what's important about this film. You don't have to agree with what might be right or wrong about it. You just have to look at it and say, this is what was achieved.
I was just about to drop, Birth of a Nation. That was the first Hollywood big budget epic, and it's Birth of a Nation, and the first film to have recorded dialogue. The Al Jolson jazz singer had blackface. There's so much history that is embarrassing, but yet you need to understand it within its context. You don't want to sweep it under the rug. You want to recognize it happened. And same with this film. Like, you don't want to say that what Lang did to his people, to his extras, to his actress, to everybody else was right. But you also don't want to sweep it under the rug because you can learn from it. Like, you made the joke beforehand, we were saying, like, actors unions take a look at this film and said, like, okay, here's what you don't do to your people.
Right.
You learn from your history, whether it's good or bad. So I think now we're rounding third, and it's over an hour of talking about Metropolis, and I'm so glad we got to talk about this movie. As you could tell, I love talking about this movie. I love the history of it. I love the achievement. There's a reason why film nerds and pretentious people have this poster up on their walls.
Is there a difference between the two? Not entirely sure.
I'm sorry, that was a little redundant, but
yeah.
Darren, I want to start with you.
Like film people are the head, and pretentious people are the heart, and then we're the mediators. Podcasts are the mediator that bring it together, hand and heart together. Done. Movie's over.
How many starving children are you giving this film?
I was just reading that the children love this movie because it, like you said, a lot of people are out of work, so they were fed and given.
So it was real easy to find malnourished children. How messed up is that?
Yeah, no, but this was like a boon to them because it was guaranteed meals, and so they were totally willing to plunge into that freezing water of the sinking city. But I had to give it a 5. It's a gorgeous movie. It, for the technical achievements, the acting, the story, the visuals. I really enjoyed it. Again, not knowing, and even had a twist at the end. Like, I didn't expect that. I'm like, oh my gosh! Like, she was. I'm like, wait, when did that happen? When did she become the machine man? And it was very clear and a wonderful film. So I can see what all the hubbub's about.
John, how many dancing girls dancing side to side, evocatively and erotically, are you giving this film?
Well, I mean, gosh, 5. Even if I didn't like it or see merit in it, I would feel obligated to give it 5. But that's not to take value away from my rating there. It's to say that there's no way you can look at a film like this and not say, recognize what it did and what it accomplished. It would be like watching Wizard of Oz, and it doesn't need to be your favorite film of all time for you to look at it and say, holy cow, what year did this come out? They pulled that off, and just be absolutely wowed by it. Or Sound of Music, or Citizen Kane, or
Gone with the Wind, Singing
in the Rain, you
2001.
name it. Exactly. So this is the true definition of that 5-star film, where it's divorced from an emotional. So you know what? I'll go back to what Darren pointed out. You have the head and you have the heart, and this film would be the mediator. So you wind up with 5 stars.
Well, I'm really glad that you guys have shown this much praise, because I always go back and forth on this and like on what I would rate it. And if this, when you look at it from a modern perspective, you're like, this isn't a 5-star film, because the pacing is what really kills me. Like the pacing of this film, I'm just like, oh my God. Like we don't need to see him search every single door, in the catacombs. Like we get it. He's lost. He doesn't know where he's going to go. Like that kind of stuff. Like this really kills it for me. But when you look at it within the context of 1927, when you look at it in the context of filmmaking and the history of film and everything like that, and what it achieved, what it does, what it represents, and what it influenced, you have to give it 5 stars because of that. Because to judge it on today's merits alone is disingenuous and not doing anybody favors. So if you're like, 3, like the robot looked fake and the pacing was off and it was weird and the acting was over the top, like you just look like a jackass if you said something like that. Like you wouldn't necessarily be wrong, but you're not portraying it in its proper context. Within its proper context, this is a 5-star film. H.G. Wells is a hack. There, I said it. Don't.
How dare you, sir?
Jeez.
How dare you?
Don't.
He
snitch
inspired
tag
one of the
me.
best episodes of Futurama ever. How dare you say that?
But there we go. So we got 5 stars across the board. How many times has that happened, Darren?
It happened in Last of the Mohicans, which was only a couple episodes ago. It happened for Kingdom of Heaven and for Gladiator back to
And
back.
for Silence of the Lambs.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Mm-hmm.
And Silence of the it's actually happened quite a few times.
Well, I think
So-
that's it. I think we just named all of them.
yeah, we were
that's
close on
amazing.
Apocalypse Now, but you gave it a 4.
Yeah, and we were close on Hunt
Yeah.
for Red October, but somebody had to get all nitpicky about stuff. Tristan.
Oh, was that me again?
Yeah,
Okay.
4.5 for Hunt for Red October. I mean, come on. I don't
I'm
know.
sure if you could give it a 4.9, you would, Tristan, but that's okay.
You don't even do half stars. You wouldn't let me get away with that.
That's true. That's true.
All right, folks. Well, that was our 100th episode, and we really do thank you for all that you do for us, and for sending in all these suggestions. We get every single suggestion. We are not able to email everybody back, as we have said before, but we do write every single one of them down and we put them in the bank. We have a lot of great stuff coming at you. I mean, like I'm looking at our bank right now of stuff we're going to talk about, and we have the next year and a half?
At least year. I mean, it might fluctuate a bit, but we have a lot of good ideas, but we never push away good ideas if they come up. Something
Absolutely.
might jump to the front of the list.
Yeah, if you guys have great ideas, which you always do, please email us and it might jump to the head of the list. And also, please give us a review on iTunes and wherever you listen to us, and go to thenerdparty.com for all of our previous episodes, and make sure to hit subscribe to get those next 100.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.